In the charged silence of a rain-soaked Manhattan street at midnight, the billionaire CEO stood surrounded by flashing police lights, his wrists locked in steel cuffs. Through the smeared window of the police cruiser, he locked eyes with a small child on the curb, a silent witness with trembling hands and wide, haunted eyes. The CEO's tailored suit clung to him, drenched and ruined, his once imposing posture now shrunken. Cameras flashed from every direction, casting hard shadows on his face and revealing a rawness rarely seen by the world. A Time magazine cover, bearing his triumphant face and headline, "Empire Builder," was plastered against a nearby newsstand, an ironic echo to his current state. A police officer barked, "Keep moving," as reporters screamed questions, their voices muffled by the storm. Inside the car, the CEO's eyes filled with tears, unnoticed by the watching world. He whispered, almost too quietly, "I tried to save her. I failed." No one heard him except the night itself. Somewhere above the chaos a voice seemed to narrate, "He built an empire, but he couldn't save her." In that moment, power and defeat, hope and despair collided, leaving only questions and a sharp ache behind. The child never looked away, anchoring the CEO to a truth deeper than wealth or shame. As the city storm raged on, the world seemed to shrink around the CEO, now shielded from the madness by the confines of the cruiser. The flashbulbs outside faded to a distant hum. His reflection in the glass became a portrait of contradiction, a face celebrated for brilliance, now distorted by fear and regret. In that tight space, memories rushed forward. Of a childhood lost, of promises made and broken, of a daughter's laugh he had tried to preserve with all his might. The police radio crackled with static, another reminder of reality closing in. He stared at his cuffed wrists, flesh marked red by steel, and whispered, "I would give up everything for one more chance." The city outside didn't care, but inside, regret made its home. He searched for the child's face in the shadows, desperate for a sign, but saw only his own reflection, a leader caught between the myth of his empire and the human price beneath. Somewhere, thunder rolled, and the world waited for the story behind the scandal to emerge. Reporters remained outside, chasing the image, not the man. They circled like vultures, hungry for a quote, a confession, a weakness. The lead journalist, umbrella forgotten, shouted, "Why did you do it?" But the rain swallowed his words. The CEO did not answer. In his silence, the crowd grew bolder, a sea of raised microphones and flashing bulbs. One woman pressed close, rain streaming over her determined face, demanding, "Is it true? Did you betray your family?" Every accusation felt like a stone, building a wall between who he was and who the world saw. A sudden flash of memory, his daughter's smile, her tiny hand in his, the promise, "I'll always protect you." The CEO squeezed his eyes shut, heart pounding, the world's noise replaced by the echo of her laugh. Nothing felt real anymore, except that loss. The police officers, soaked and impatient, struggled to maintain control. One officer gripped the CEO's arm, urging him forward. Another kept a wary eye on the surging crowd. The CEO stumbled, shoes slipping on slick pavement. His gaze flickered to the child on the curb, still unmoving, eyes locked on his. The officer said, "Let's go, sir," voice gruff but not unkind. The CEO hesitated, then nodded, his voice barely audible, "She needs someone to look after her." The officer said nothing. For a moment, the storm seemed to soften, the sounds of chaos blending into a hush. The child's presence cut through everything, the press, the law, the empire. A silent plea passed between them, a hope that somewhere, something could still be saved. As the car pulled away, the city swallowed the aftermath. The CEO, framed by rain and red taillights, kept his eyes on the child until distance and darkness claimed her silhouette. In the hush that followed, the child remained on the curb, small and defiant against the world's storm. The empire's fall echoed through every alley, every shuttered window. Somewhere, the voice whispered again, "He built an empire, but he couldn't save her." In that moment, A legacy hung in the balance, weighed not by fortune or fame, but by the shattering cost of love lost and innocence betrayed. Both the CEO and the child were left alone, each marked by a single, unforgettable moment. The next morning, sunlight pierced the blinds of a modest apartment, where a young boy sat alone by a cracked window. His clothes were worn and stained, and his eyes traced the busy street below with quiet intensity. He was no older than 10, but a heaviness rested in his small shoulders. Outside, the city buzzed with life, indifferent to his solitude. His mother had left early, promising to return with a job, but he knew the weight of waiting too well. His stomach growled quietly, but he focused instead on the shadow of a man passing beneath the flickering street lamp, a man whose silhouette whispered secrets of absence and longing. The boy murmured softly, "I won't be like him. I'll be better." Somewhere in that whispered vow lay the seed of future ambition, born from the bitter soil of neglect. The city's noise swelled, but inside that quiet room, a fierce determination took root. Across town, a young woman turned away from the polished glass doors of a gleaming corporate tower. Her sharp business suit was impeccable, her posture proud yet fractured by a quiet hurt. Inside, the boardroom had rejected her ideas, her vision dismissed by those who saw only the power she threatened. She clenched her fists, whispering to herself, "They don't know what I'm capable of." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but her jaw set firm. This moment of rejection was not defeat, it was fuel. She thought of the little girl she once was, watching adults make impossible decisions, promising never to be powerless again. With a deep breath, she stepped back into the city's pulse, the wind catching strands of her dark hair as the skyscrapers loomed overhead like silent judges. Her journey was only beginning, and failure was not an option. In a small neighborhood store, a boy sat on the floor surrounded by shelves stocked with canned goods and faded labels. His mother knelt before the store manager, desperation etched into her tired face. "Please," she pleaded softly, "I just need a chance to prove myself." The manager's expression was unreadable, the silence thick and heavy. The boy watched, clutching a worn toy car, his heart pounding with unspoken hopes and fears. He knew this was more than a job, it was survival. As the rain tapped gently against the store's front windows, the boy's mother stood and whispered, "We'll make it through. Somehow." The boy looked up, meeting his mother's gaze, and found in it the fierce spark that had kept them going all these years. The struggle was real, but so was their resolve. At a luxurious penthouse office, the CEO, now free but hollow, stood staring out over the city skyline. His reflection in the glass was a ghost of the man he had been. He traced the sharp lines of the towers, thinking of the daughter whose laughter still haunted his dreams. The weight of legacy pressed down, heavier than ever. He muttered, "Everything I built, and it wasn't enough." His assistant entered quietly, offering a file thick with documents and photos. "There's something you need to see," she said gently. He hesitated, heart racing, then nodded. What lay within might undo everything he thought he knew. The past was no longer buried, it was clawing its way back, demanding reckoning. Outside, the city roared on, oblivious to the man on the edge of discovery. Back in a quiet suburb, the child from the opening scene sat beneath an old oak tree, clutching a faded photograph. The photo showed two men, one handsome, one solemn, and a baby wrapped in blankets. She traced the edges with trembling fingers, whispering, "Who are you?" The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered. Her mother's absence left a vacuum, but within it grew a fierce desire to uncover truth. The wind stirred fallen leaves, and somewhere in the distance, a car engine hummed, a sound that would change everything. The child's eyes burned with a mix of fear and hope. The empire's shadow stretched far, but this was her story now, a story of hidden roots, fractured families, and the chance for reconciliation. The journey from broken past to uncertain future had just begun. The CEO sat alone in a sleek, dimly lit office late into the night, the glow of multiple screens casting a cold light on his weary face. He stared at spreadsheets and business plans, each figure a reminder of the empire he was determined to reclaim. His phone buzzed relentlessly, a steady stream of messages from investors, board members, and advisors, all demanding results. But his mind was elsewhere, haunted by the daughter he'd lost and the secrets his family hid. "This empire isn't just a business," he murmured. "It's my chance to fix everything." Sleepless nights became routine, meals forgotten, birthdays erased from calendars. His world narrowed to endless work and the cold glow of ambition. But even victories felt hollow, tinted with the price he paid. A photo on his desk showed two small hands clutching his, reminding him what really mattered. The cost of power was rising, and the CEO was already paying the toll. The young woman from before stood before a packed room, delivering a bold pitch that could change everything. Her voice was steady, infused with fierce determination. Yet, as she spoke, she caught the eyes of skeptical board members, their doubt palpable. Friends and lovers had drifted away during her relentless climb, their absence a sharp ache beneath her armor. She thought of lost birthdays and broken promises, the personal cost hidden behind her polished smile. "This is my moment," she whispered inwardly. The pitch ended, applause polite but cautious. She stepped down, heart pounding, knowing the journey was just beginning, and that every victory would exact its price. Power was not a gift, it was a battlefield. But she was ready to fight. In a small cafe, the boy who once waited alone watched as his mother juggled two jobs, exhaustion plain on her face. She handed him a quick smile before rushing off, leaving him to navigate the world, mostly on his own. Friends called him, but he declined invitations. His nights were spent studying, dreaming of something better. He knew the sacrifices his mother made, felt the weight of their shared struggle. "One day," he vowed quietly, "I'll build a life for us both." Sleepless nights and long days became his new normal. His innocence was traded for determination, and though the path was uncertain, his resolve burned steady. In the silence of that cafe, hope took root amid hardship. Back in the penthouse, the CEO's assistant handed him a fresh dossier. It contained clues about a hidden sibling, a twin no one had ever mentioned. His breath caught as he flipped through photos. Two men who looked almost identical, separated at birth, their lives a mystery intertwined with his own. The revelation threatened to undo everything. "A twin," he whispered, disbelief and hope battling inside. He stared out the window, the cityscape suddenly feeling more complicated, more urgent. This discovery meant rewriting his history and confronting family secrets buried deep. He knew the climb ahead would be steeper than ever. The empire's foundation was shaking, and so was his grip. Under the old oak tree, the child clutched the photograph tighter. Her young mind raced, piecing together the fragments of a story no one had told her. The distant engine sound grew louder, an approaching car that might bring answers or more questions. She stood, eyes fierce with a mixture of fear and hope, and whispered, "I will find the truth." The journey from forgotten shadows toward discovery was painful and uncertain, but she no longer felt alone. A hidden twin, a lost father, a fractured family, all threads weaving a story that could change everything. The future was uncertain, but the child's determination was unwavering. This was only the beginning. The boardroom was silent, except for the soft shuffle of papers and the hum of the city beyond floor-to-ceiling windows. The CEO stood at the head of the table, his face a mask of controlled fury and disbelief. The revelation that the business was never truly his to command hit like a thunderclap. "You never told me," he said, voice low but cutting, eyes scanning the room. His co-founder, a man in his early 40s with a smug expression, avoided eye contact. "It was never about ownership," the co-founder replied smoothly. "It was about power." The room stiffened. Suddenly, whispered secrets spilled into open accusations, siblings disguised as partners, alliances formed on lies. The CEO clenched his fists, realizing his empire was built on shifting sands. The ground beneath him was cracking, and he could no longer stand firm. The betrayal was not just business. It was family. In a private meeting room, the CEO confronted his mentor, a once trusted figure now revealed as the architect of deceit. The mentor's gray hair and calm demeanor belied the ruthless cunning beneath. "Why?" the CEO demanded, eyes burning with betrayal. "Because you were naive," the mentor said softly. "I built this company while you chased dreams." The CEO felt the weight of stolen years crushing him. Every late night, every sacrifice, tainted by theft. "You stole from me," he said bitterly. The mentor's lips twitched in a half-smile. "I ensured survival." The room felt colder, the line between friend and foe forever blurred. The CEO's world fractured once more. The true cost of power laid bare, betrayal by the very hands that once lifted him. In a sterile hospital room, the CEO sat beside a doctor delivering news that shattered everything. "You have less time than you think," the doctor said quietly, eyes kind but firm. The CEO's breath hitched, the weight of mortality pressing down like never before. He clenched the armrest, fighting tears. "I can't tell anyone," he said hoarsely. "Not yet." The doctor nodded, understanding the silence demanded by both pride and fear. Outside, life surged on, board meetings, deals, rumors, but inside, time slipped away like sand through clenched fingers. The CEO was dying, a secret he bore alone, and the empire had fought to save was now threatened not just by rivals, but by his own body. In that moment, the facade cracked, revealing a man desperate to leave more than just a name behind. In a quiet suburban home, the child waited anxiously as the car she saw earlier pulled into the driveway. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out, a face both familiar and foreign. The man was her father, a stranger with kind eyes and cautious steps. "I'm here," he said softly, voice trembling. The child's heart raced as questions flooded her mind. Why now? Why after all this time? She held the photograph tighter, the past and future colliding in that breathless moment. The father and daughter approached slowly, their silence heavy with unspoken apologies and fragile hope. The journey toward truth was no longer just a dream. It was real, daunting, and necessary. The family fractures began to show signs of healing, but the road ahead was steep and uncertain. The CEO stood alone in his office after a stormy board meeting, the weight of betrayals and secrets pressing down. His hands trembled as he looked at a framed family photo, now heavy with new meaning. The empire was crumbling, his co-founder a sibling, his mentor a thief, and his health failing. Yet in this darkness, a flicker of clarity emerged. He whispered to the empty room, "This isn't the end. It's a beginning." The floor beneath him may have fallen away, but he vowed to rebuild, not just the business, but the fractured family and himself. Outside, the city lights glittered, indifferent yet full of possibility. The collapse was brutal, but from it, the seeds of redemption and truth could grow. The story was far from over. The boardroom buzzed with tension as the decisive vote approached. The CEO stood at the center, his eyes scanning the faces of those who would decide the fate of his empire. He felt the weight of legacy pressing down. This was more than a company. It was the sum of his life's work and sacrifices. "This vote will determine if we survive or crumble," he said, voice steady but raw. His daughter sat quietly in the corner, eyes searching for signs of hope. Allies hesitated, rivals smiled thinly. Every argument echoed personal histories and broken trusts. When the votes were cast, silence stretched like a breath held too long. The CEO's heart pounded, knowing this moment would shape more than just business. It would reshape family, future, and forgiveness. The empire teetered on the edge, and the world watched, waiting for the fall or the rise. After the vote, the CEO sought solitude in his office, the door closing with a muted click behind him. The weight of decision pressed heavy on his chest. He stared at his reflection in the glass, seeing a man both broken and unyielding. A message from his daughter lit his phone screen, a simple, "I'm proud of you." The words pierced through the turmoil, a balm to the wounds no one else could see. He whispered to the empty room, "It's not just about power anymore." The empire was changing, and so was he. Redemption wasn't found in victory alone, but in the courage to face the cracks and heal. Outside, the city's hum felt softer, as if holding its breath with him. The night was far from over, but for the first time, hope flickered in the dark. In a quiet garden, the CEO met with his newly found twin brother. The resemblance was uncanny, two halves of a fractured whole. Words were scarce, years of separation had created a chasm hard to bridge. Yet in the silence, a tentative bond formed. "We were kept apart," the CEO said softly, "but maybe now we can be whole." The twin nodded, eyes shining with a mix of regret and hope. Together, they walked beneath blooming trees, shadows lengthening as the day faded. Their journey was just beginning, a complicated mix of forgiveness, trust, and rebuilding. The family was no longer defined by secrets, but by the fragile promise of unity. The empire's story expanded, weaving in threads of unexpected kinship. Back in the suburban home, the child and her real father sat at a wooden kitchen table cluttered with old photographs and documents. The father's hands trembled as he shared stories long hidden, the truth spilling out in fragments and apologies. The child listened, eyes wide but steady, absorbing the tangled web of history and hurt. "I'm sorry for the years lost," he said quietly. "But I'm here now." The room felt heavy with pain and possibility, a fragile bridge being built between past mistakes and future hope. The child's small hand reached for his, a silent acceptance and a plea for more than words. In that humble kitchen the story shifted, broken bonds beginning to mend. In the quiet aftermath, the CEO stood alone on the rooftop of his company's skyscraper, city lights glittering below like stars caught on Earth. He breathed deeply, feeling the night air cool against his skin, a rare moment of peace amid chaos. "This is the moment everything changes," he whispered. The empire he built was no longer just a symbol of power, but a canvas for redemption, truth, and family. His silhouette was strong yet fragile, a man reborn from ashes and secrets. Behind him, the distant hum of life continued, indifferent yet beautiful. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it held promise. He turned away from the edge, ready to face whatever came next, with love, loss, and courage as his guides. The CEO sat quietly in a hospital room, bathed in soft morning light. His face, etched with fatigue and relief, reflected a man transformed by hardship. The cancer was in remission, but the journey had changed everything. He whispered to his daughter, "I missed so much, but I'm here now." She squeezed his hand gently, tears shining in her young eyes. The vast empire outside these walls felt distant, replaced by a fragile hope rooted in family and healing. He understood that legacy wasn't built on wealth or power alone, but on the sacrifices made in silence. The road ahead would be long, filled with challenges, but they would walk it together, no longer alone in the shadow of secrets. The young woman stood on the stage of a bustling conference hall, her voice steady and clear as she shared a story of resilience and renewal. The crowd listened, rapt, as she spoke not just of business victories, but of personal battles and growth. She looked out and caught the eye of the CEO, who smiled quietly in the front row. Their journeys intertwined, both marked by loss and the courage to rise. "We are not defined by what breaks us," she said firmly, "but by how we rebuild." The applause that followed was genuine, a recognition of more than success, a tribute to strength. The city outside buzzed with new possibilities, mirroring the promise in her words. This was more than a speech, it was a declaration of rebirth. In a quiet neighborhood park, the boy who had once waited alone laughed freely, chasing a kite beneath a bright blue sky. His mother watched nearby, exhaustion replaced by a rare smile. Their struggle had not vanished, but moments like this were victories of a different kind. The boy's eyes sparkled with dreams, no longer shadowed by hunger or fear. "I'm going to build a life for us," he told his mother, voice full of promise. She nodded, tears glistening. The boy's innocence, once lost, was slowly returning, fragile but fiercely guarded. The world outside still whispered challenges, but here, hope blossomed quietly amid green leaves and warm sunlight. In the suburban kitchen, the child and her father shared a quiet dinner, laughter breaking through the years of silence. Old wounds lingered but softened with each story exchanged. The father reached across the table, squeezing her hand gently. "We have time now." The child nodded, her eyes reflecting a cautious optimism. Their journey was far from over, but the walls built by absence were beginning to crumble. The house was filled with the scent of home, a promise that family could be rebuilt on truth and love. Outside, twilight settled, painting the world in soft purples and blues, a new chapter unfolding quietly in the night. On the rooftop of his company building, the CEO stood, watching the city lights flicker like stars below. The night air was crisp, carrying a quiet stillness that matched the calm settling inside him. He breathed deeply, feeling the weight of the past lift slightly, replaced by a gentle resolve. The empire was no longer a fortress of ambition, but a landscape of lessons and love. "This is what I become," he thought, eyes closed against the breeze. His silhouette was steady, a man shaped not by wealth or power, but by the grace to face loss and build anew. The future shimmered ahead, uncertain yet filled with quiet promise, like the first light of dawn breaking the night. The CEO sat silently in front of a large mirror, his reflection framed by the dim glow of city lights behind him. His face, weathered but calm, showed a man who had faced both empire and emptiness. The weight of past battles lingered in his eyes, yet a quiet peace had settled beneath the surface. Behind him, the distant sound of fireworks blossomed into the night sky, brilliant colors flashing briefly. He whispered to his reflection, "I left the company but never left her." The words hung in the stillness, a promise and a truth. The mirror reflected not just a man, but the sum of a story, love lost, found, and fiercely held. Outside, the city pulsed with life, indifferent yet full of silent witnesses to his journey. This was the final moment before a new chapter. Outside the boardroom, the young woman watched as her father left the building for the last time as CEO. His stride was steady but lighter than before, a man unburdened by titles yet grounded by love. She felt a swell of pride and sorrow. He may have left the company, she thought, but he never left her. The city around them buzzed with 1,000 stories, but theirs was one of quiet resilience. She folded her arms and breathed deeply, ready to carry forward what he had begun, not just in business, but in family. This moment, small and profound, marked the end of one legacy and the birth of another. Her eyes glistened with tears she refused to shed, determined to honor the past while forging a new future. In a quiet nursery, the child sat reaching up toward an empty boardroom chair bathed in soft afternoon light. Her small hand lingered just inches from the polished wood, symbolizing a future yet unwritten. The weight of her family's complicated past rested lightly on her shoulders, an inheritance of secrets and love intertwined. She whispered, "This is mine now." The room was still, save for the gentle hum of distant traffic and the rustle of curtains. It was a moment suspended between innocence and destiny, hope and uncertainty. As shadows lengthened, the child's eyes shone with determination. The story was not over, it was beginning anew, a legacy reclaimed by the next generation. The CEO and his twin brother stood side by side on a quiet hillside, overlooking the city they once only glimpsed from afar. The wind tugged gently at their jackets as they shared a rare moment of peace. "We have a chance to build something real," the CEO said, voice steady with newfound hope. His twin nodded, a faint smile breaking through years of distance and pain. Together, they watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple. The empire they once fought over was no longer their measure. Instead, they found strength in unity and shared dreams. The past no longer chained them. This was a beginning, forged from the ashes of broken bonds and the promise of brotherhood. As fireworks erupted high above the city, the CEO watched silently, his reflection shimmering in a nearby window. The night air was cool and still, the celebrations a distant echo to his own quiet victory. He left the company, but never left her. The words repeated in his mind, a final, solemn promise. His family's story was no longer one of secrets and distance, but of courage and connection. The city lights below flickered like stars, and the future stretched endlessly before him. Though the journey had been filled with loss and pain, it had led to something greater, a legacy of love, truth and hope. He breathed deeply and turned away, ready to face whatever came next.